Everyone, and everybody. Today's discussion will be on the concept of non-self in Buddhism. I think this is something which has been mistranslated a lot, especially in conventional Buddhism, because this idea that there is no self and that is the basic teaching that even in anicca dukkha anatta has been mistranslated, has been translated actually as a non-self because of this atman concept. Atman being the idea of a permanent soul. In English, I think it's what you call a soul, or this eternal self. For a person who believes in rebirth, there's this idea that there is something which is supposed to travel throughout all, something which is not changing, which travels, and this is this soul or self. And the polar opposite of this is what we take to be as non-self. And that's the idea which has been there in Buddhism for the longest time, even though this is not exactly what Lord Buddha was talking about when he talked about anatta. Vyanguna, do you want to add anything to that? Because I think that example would come in great here.
Yeah, so I'll just give a background on why this soul concept came. So sometime back when, like before even Lord Buddha was there, so there was these people, like maybe the teachers, who have developed their minds and who could have easily looked at about 1,000 lives back, because they have developed their mind so that they can see their previous life, the previous life. Likewise, they could have looked for about 1,000 lives. So I will just explain what this Atmic concept, or the soul concept, was there in the Brahmic society, because the confusion would have come from there. So because the perception that this soul or the Atma is there had come from this Brahmic concept. So what they've done is when they were looking to end suffering, so what they've done is that they've seen at their previous life, the previous life. Likewise, they've looked at about 1,000 years back, or not 1,000 years, 1,000 lives back. Still, they could see something, and they assumed that there is something called a soul or a self or something permanent, which is going from one place to another place to another place, which is not possible to be eliminated. So hence, the dukkha is not possible to be eliminated. So they have this sloka, which is a phrase that they used to have in their Brahmic books, the way the books, which the meaning is that they tell to the soul in this poem. They say that soul, you cannot be cut through a sword. You cannot be burned through something. So when I cut, it's like you going from a nest to another nest, cage to another cage. You go from one cage to another cage when you get cut or burned. So it goes on. So that was their poem, which they believed. That's the concept they had. So they thought that when you get died, you get the birth in another place, then you get died there, then you get birth in another place. Likewise, you go on. So Lord Buddha's concept is different. He clearly says that there is nothing called this kind of Atma or a soul. So that is clear, right? So the confusion comes when you say that there is nothing called Atma or a soul or a self. But in reality, you can see, you can feel that self, right? So if someone asks you, so do you feel yourself as yourself or self? It's an easy answer, right? You can feel it. But the other end of this Brahmic concept of Atma or the soul is that you don't have anything like that, which means that no soul, no Atma, no self. It's just matter, or it's nothing, right? Like it would go into the soil as it was previously, nothing as a self. It gets birth. It's purely physically explained that it gets birth with the atoms, and then it gets died, and then get into the soil. That's all. You don't have anything called self or yourself or anything. But in reality, you feel self, right? So this is where the confusion comes. When Lord Buddha says this Atmic concept of Brahmi is different or wrong, then someone would go to the other end saying that there's nothing called self. So then the question comes, then why should we do anything here? Right? If there's no self, why should you do anything? Because it would anyway die down. It would anyway decay. It would anyway go to the soil again. So this is when a lot of people get confused and go away from maybe Buddhism even, because they feel that it's not practical or it's not reality, because you feel yourself. So here it's really important to clear this out. So in Buddhism or in Lord Buddha's teachings, it is not said that you have a permanent Atma or self or soul. Neither it's not been said that you don't have anything. It's the Buddha Desana is that when you have causes to have a self, you would have the uh, effect as a self. If you don't have the causes as a self, you don't have the effect as self. So if you get into that Brahmic concept of Atma or soul, it's contradicting to the Buddha teaching, because it says irrespective of the cause or anything, there is something called Atma, which means that you can't eliminate it, which means that your dukkha can't be eliminated, because Atma would definitely carry dukkha. So in Anatma, if you take Usita mentioned about this translation thing, it's a really tricky one, right? So Anatma word is there in like a lot of places in Tripitaka, and it's been translated in different ways. One way to look at it is that you can check the dictionary, the Pali dictionary. So in Pali, this is called the Trilakshana is called Anicca Dukkha Anatta. So this Anatta is translated into Sinhala. So currently also in the dictionary it says like Anatta is Asara. Asara is like it's not valuable, it's not fruitful, it's not worth, something like that, right? But which means that also means that it is not worth to take it as a self. So it's a little bit like you need to be very sharp to understand it, because in Sinhala, current in the traditional explanations, it's really directly translated it as anatta as anatma, which is non-self, completely non-self. So this is a tricky question, because it doesn't make much of a practical sense to see non-self. But the real meaning of this is anatta is, at least in my understanding, anatta is not worth, not valuable, not fruitful, because it's anicca and it's dukkha. So because it's anicca and dukkha, it's not valuable, not worth, not fruitful. So you can then derive, because it's not fruitful or valuable or worth, it is not valuable or worth to take it as a self, to yourself, to as yourself, or to yourself. So that likewise, that's how you remove the ego. You remove the idea of self, and you remove how you have clinged into things as yourself, as to yourself. So that is the part you have to clear out there. But if you directly take the translation, I think the better explanation is that it's not fruitful. Hence, it's not worth to take it as self or a self. It's not that you don't have self. Buddhism says as long as you have the causes to have the effect, which is self, the self would be there. When you eliminate the causes to have the result of self, the effect self would not be there. So I'm not sure this might be pretty alien to someone. This might be pretty new to someone. So there would be question. So I would I think if you don't have it right now, maybe you can just type it or maybe send a voice message. We can clear it more. But I think it's really important to separate this Atma thing and the Anatta thing, because Atmic concept or the soul concept in Brahmic is refused by Buddhism. Also, the other end, which is no self or maybe nothing, it's just materialistic thing, that is also rejected in the Buddhism that I know. So it's basically the cause and effect the Buddhism speaks about. If the self is there, it's because you have generated the causes to have that result self. So if you eliminate that causes, you can get rid of this self, which is the anatta part. I think so. This is the explanation that I wanted to give Bushita. I'm not sure whether it's really clear, but if that's not clear, we can discuss here also. Otherwise, I think we can move ahead.
I'm just going to add a few things to what you said, Vihunaya. Just elaborate it further. In the sense, if we take there to be a self, we are falling into one extreme. Because if you really think about it, is there one thing in our lives which has been consistent? We know, like even in a physical sense, that all the cells in our body are replaced. Like none of the cells in your body which were there when you were born are present now. There is nothing really you can pinpoint to which has been the same thing. It all changes as you go along. In a broader spectrum, if you take the multiple lives that you've led, if you're a person who is open to these Buddhist concepts of rebirth and everything, if you look at it in a broader spectrum, you've been a human, you've been an animal, you've been a deva, you've been a brahma, you've been in multiple different dimensions, taking multiple different forms. So really, what is your true form? And even in your life, if you take your true form to be your body, that's a bit of a tricky one, yeah, because once you concentrate on your breath, or once you do these kind of meditation practices, I'm sure most of you have, and you must have noticed how you completely move out of that bodily experience and move to your breath, or move to something out of your physical body experience. So really, is it when I'm sitting down and focusing on my breath, is it Usita, who is a 25-year-old male who is a medical student, who is really focusing on his breath, or at that moment is it just his breath? Another instance is when you walk past a mirror and you see yourself and you recognize, this is me. But throughout the rest of the day, did you really always know that was you? What I'm trying to say is there was actually a sense of self. This sense of self was present. However, the object which it identified with always kind of changed. But the sense of self, if you take it, was always present. So really, you can't really pinpoint to anything and say, this is me, because every moment that is changing. It's the dualistic nature of it. Like if you say there is a self here, then where is it? Like where is this one self you're talking about? But if you say there is no self, then who am I? Who is talking over here? Who can you see? Who can you hear? Who is the person who hears? So you can't really say there is a self, but you can't really say there is no self either. If you take it as if you fall into one end, you fall to an extreme, and your perception of this will actually be covered. Rather, what we should do is know that there are causes for us to have a self. And what is the causes for us to have the self? Because in order to take something as valuable, in order to take something as ichai, sapai, sarai, we need a concept of a self. So as long as we enjoy the pleasures of the world, as long as we want happiness, and as long as we find things valuable within our mind and within the world, there is going to be a concept of a self which will be present. The causes for that will be present. So again, moving into the practice, But that is looking really are the causes that are the is the reason we are running behind this world and this mind. Is it really worth it? Are we really benefiting from this? But as long as we will benefit from it, I think there has to be a sense of self to enjoy it. I think this is a bit of a deep concept. I hope I didn't confuse any of you all. Anyway, the other one I want to get into is another instance where Lord Buddha talked about is we are actually our pancha upadana skandha, that is the five aggregates basically. When these five aggregates, if you take the example of a bicycle, if you take a bicycle for example, if you take out the two wheels, keep it separately, take out the handle, keep it separately, take out the seat, keep it separately, and take out the chains and everything and keep it separately, then if someone asks you, where is the bicycle, is it in the wheels, you will say no, that's just the wheels, you can't say that is the bicycle. Then is it in the handle? No, it's not in the handle, it's not in the seat, it's not in the chain either. But when we put all these things together, we had an idea that there was a self. And there is an idea of a self, and that will always be present until the point of Nibbana. Now, if we are trying to understand this in like a logical sense, we can understand it. We can like hypothetically look, okay, so there is no self in an enlightened being, but then that is also just making up an imaginative scenario and it's not fruitful. Rather, what should the practice be is to see what we have taken as Nichya, Sukha, Atta. That is what we have taken as to our liking, pleasurable and valuable. When we focus our medicine here, when we focus our practice here, automatically the causes and the need for a self will decrease on its own. As wisdom grows, it will happen on its own. We cannot, by force, at any point say, okay, there is no self, so I'm not going to be a self anymore. It doesn't work that way. Why? Because you didn't treat it at the root cause. The root cause of you taking the world to be valuable and the mind to be valuable will still be there. As long as the cause is there, the effect will always be there. And that is the law of karma. As long as the causes are there, as long as you're putting causes, the effect will be there. Yeah. And another thing I want to talk about is I've heard some people tell, when they get into deep stages of meditation, your sense of self disappears. And I think what they're talking about here possibly could be, again, there are different types of meditation techniques, and it could be various states they're talking about. But there are states where you don't really where the sensors and the inputs of them are not really in action. So if we take if we take the rupa aspect, there are no real sights. There are no real sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and it's just the mind over here. So, and you would see like a lot of spiritual practices talk about silence, talk about quietness, emptiness, space. But even if you enter this particular dimension, this dimension of nothingness, of space, still you haven't worked on the causes, as in you are still making the causes for the self. What I mean by this is you can still have a self. A self is still needed to experience this dimension of even space, of silence, of nothingness. And even there, even though you don't see any rupa, by rupa I mean images, sounds, smells, tastes, and touch, and so on, there will still be a sense of self to perceive the mind. The reason for most of you all, this is completely unnecessary. But the reason I say this is because people, I've heard people say that I've reached a particular state in my meditation, and in my meditation, I feel that there is no self. But here, I feel like that's just you entering a different dimension of your mind. Know that unless you don't work on the causes, you are never going to, the effect is always going to be there. So that effect of a self we will always be there. It's only at the time of becoming an arahat, not even a sotapanna. It's only at the time of becoming an arahat that this weave of a self completely disappears. Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to say. So I think we've actually covered almost everything that we wanted to say. Anything more to add to that, Vihangunaya?
No, I think you covered it, Usita. The only thing is that I think probably to get a deeper understanding on this, probably this would not be the forum, but I would like to, if someone is interested on this, probably he or she could definitely look at Paticca in a deeper sense. Also regarding Abhidharma, uh, Abhidharma is another special segment of Buddhism. So there are some books you can read. So this this explains how the uh, how the chitta works, how the mind works, and how it's been formulated, and how it goes and goes on and on. So these things would give more depth in this understanding. But I think to get an understanding basically on the concept of non-self and how it's been explained in Buddhism, I think this is. I hope this is clear, and I think probably we can also discuss if there's any unclear areas here.
Yeah, so we decided to change the format a little bit. We will be moving into the question and answer session right now, because I've noticed, like, once you go into the meditation, you might lose all the questions that you already had. And if you want to continue, so we'll have the meditation towards the end, and we can you all can continue the meditation even after we end it over here if you feel like it. So yeah, are there any questions or any comments, anything to add to this? Anyone is welcome. Was it clear which of what was conveyed over here? If you all are not comfortable in speaking out, you all can even type it in chit chat.
Clear, but for people who just joined, who probably know absolutely, like, who are probably very new to it, Usita, you wanna maybe talk about the Anicca Dukkha Anatta? Because some of them might not know.
Oh yeah. Actually, this particular talk was put forward because some people were actually very much distressed with this idea of non-self, as in it really confused them about Buddhism. So if actually this is the talk you want to get into from the basics of Buddhism, this is not aimed at that. Rather, this particular talk we actually thought of having anyway, because in case someone had this strong idea of non-self being what anatta means. Yeah, so that was the main reason we had this particular conversation. But yeah, I will quickly brush up on that, on the tilakshana, that is on anicca dukkha anatta. Anicca basically means nothing in this world can be maintained to your liking. Yeah. So that is a controversial statement. Why? Because there are so many things in this world that we like, be it our friend, be it our parents, be it our occupation, be it free time. There are so many things we can pinpoint to say, yeah, I do really enjoy this. But the thing there is, what Lord Buddha said is, everything in this world is actually anicca. That is, it is not to our liking. It cannot be maintained to our liking. So the practice basically, I'm saying this again in like a very quick sense, because the question was asked, the practice is basically to really observe and see what you took to be in your liking. So, in the same examples, take it your friends, take it chilling out, free time, to see if it was actually valuable, to see if it was actually to your liking, and because of that, was it actually valuable? This value system concept is actually extremely important. Like I feel like in the meditation of diving into our our consciousness, and why we actually do the things that we do, this value concept is very important, because we are extremely motivated to do some things. And really, why are we so motivated to do those things? Sometimes we lie, sometimes we can hurt another person. Lord Buddha said all of this is done because we take things which are not valuable to be valuable. So, what did he mean by this? That is actually the investigation of what you should be looking into. And the reason, the problem with taking anatta as non-self is basically this problem. This entire very easy to use equation of anicca dukkha anatta gets covered up.